it's Vanessa the Crafty Gemini. I post weekly crafting, cooking, and organic gardening videos right here on my YouTube channel. In this video tutorial, I'm teaching you all how to make my go-to soap making recipe. So let me tell you a little bit about this soap recipe that we're going to be making today. A lot of you maybe have watched my first video that I did a couple years ago teaching you the basics of cold process soap making. If you haven't seen it, go ahead and click right there. I'll send you to that tutorial. That's going to give you basically a little bit of the scientific background and how it works. And I go through a really simple soap batch there. But this time we're going to kick it up, and this is my really nice and mild soap bar. This uses 4 different types of oils that you can get at your local grocery store or health food store, okay? We'll be working with olive oil, coconut oil, castor oil, and sweet almond oil. So really good moisturizing oils that we'll be using. Aside from that, you're going to need some distilled water, and then you're also going to need some sodium hydroxide. You can find them, I usually will get mine at a local Ace hardware store, but you can also find a lot of soap making supply online vendors, and I'll link you guys below this video in the description box on where I get mine these days, okay, because I can buy it in bulk. With all those ingredients, we'll be able to make an entire loaf using the mold that I prefer to use. I'll also link to you there. All the supplies that I'll be using throughout the video will be linked in the description box below, so you know where you can get these supplies to get started. We're going to end up with maybe 9 bars this size. You can see how thick they are. It's about 1 inch thick. And so you can get less or more depending on how thick you cut them. And you can always cut this in half and use maybe half of this bar just for your face. This is a really mild soap. It's great for sensitive skin. We won't be adding any colorants or any scents or oils, essential oils, to this soap batch. I'm going to keep it real nice and simple. So let's jump right into the process and I'll teach you how I make them. So for setting up, I have my digital scale here that measures all the way down to 0.01 of an ounce. And we are using a digital scale. This is something that you can't really soap make without because you need to measure all your ingredients accordingly. Now, even though we are working with liquids, right, the oils and the water that we'll be using, we are measuring everything by weight instead of by volume. I know a lot of times people ask me, well, you're working with liquids, why are you measuring it by weight? Because that's what we do in soap making. Everything is done by weight. So in a measuring cup here, go ahead and measure out 8.5 ounces of distilled water. And keep in mind that all the materials and supplies, like the cups and everything I use for soap making, I do not cross them over and use them for anything that has to do with food or in the kitchen. I keep all my soap making supplies separate. So I've placed the water with the distilled water inside another plastic container to keep it more contained, and that's just what I prefer to do. I'm measuring out my lye here, and we're going to want 4.2 ounces, again by weight, 4.2 ounces of the 100% lye or sodium hydroxide. Now we sprinkle in our lye into the distilled water, okay? You never want to do it opposite. Never add water into the lye, okay? Always lye into the water. Now I'm going to add all of it in here, and I'm going to carefully swish it around. Now, because of the amount of water that I use, this is a very highly concentrated lye water solution. So make sure you're wearing gloves. If you are not very experienced in soap making, make sure that you're also wearing long sleeves. Cover your areas. You don't want to splash this stuff anywhere, okay? This gets very hot. I like to keep this cup with the lye water solution inside of another container. And that way I can contain a little bit better in case there's any tips or spills or things like that, okay? So I'm just swishing it around with the spatula to dissolve all of the lye crystals, and then I'm just going to set this aside. Now as the lye water solution cools a little bit, let's measure our oils. I'm zeroing out my digital scale with the bowl on top, okay? So I can add each one of my oils directly in there and measure as I go. I'm using plain old olive oil. I don't use extra virgin olive oil when I'm making soap because it's expensive and I like to save that for my vinaigrettes and things. We're going to pour in here 15 ounces of plain old whatever olive oil you can get your hands on. 15 ounces. I have my 15 ounces. I can zero out my scale again. And now let's go with the second oil. I'm using coconut oil here. And we're adding 9 ounces of coconut oil. You want to zero out the scale after you add each oil so you know you're starting from 0. Now we're going with sweet almond oil. And here we're just going to measure out 3 ounces. And then you're going to do the same thing, zero out your scale again, and add the last oil, which is castor oil. And again, we're going with 3 ounces of the castor oil as well. Now, if you notice, you see some kind of solids inside my oils, and that's because of the coconut oil. It was only semi-melted. I didn't go ahead and melt it ahead of time. What I'm doing here is allowing the lye water solution, which is kind of hot, to do the melting of the coconut oil for me. And I'm just going to swish this back and forth, letting the heat do the work for me by dissolving all of those coconut oil solids until I see that there's none left. And now I'm going to go in with my immersion blender. And this is a very key tool to have in soap making. If you try to do it by hand, I'm not sure if that will even work or how long it will take you. Trust me, this is something that you want to invest in. This one cost me about $17 or $20 or something. And this just makes the soap making a lot easier and a lot faster. So what you want to do here is just pulse it, and we're trying to emulsify this, right? Combine oils with the lye water solution. You can still see some streaking in there, so that's not done. We want to get it till it's all complete, one same color, and then to the point where I can lift up the immersion blender, and if I make some little trails on top of the batter, they'll kind of stay a little bit raised, and it won't just melt right back into the batter. So that point in soap making is called trace. And so you can kind of see how it makes some streaks on the top of the batter and they're staying on top. So that's a light to medium trace, and that's good. And now we're just basically ready to pour our soap batter into our mold. So the mold that I like to use here is a perfect size, especially if you're just making a batch for your family. Just pour everything in. And this recipe, I did design it to be enough batter to exactly fill one of these loaf molds, okay? So you should end up with just about as much soap batter as I have here. And notice that I have my mold on top of an old cookie sheet, okay? And that's just going to make it easier for me to take it over to the oven, because that's how we're going to be finishing off this soap batter. So that's called oven processed. I'm going to very carefully tap this just to make sure I bring any little air bubbles up to the top. And now let's pop it in the oven. I set my oven here to 170 degrees, which is not going to take any time at all to preheat. So even if you forget to do it before, go ahead and do it now. It'll just take a couple minutes. I'm going to slip this in there, and then you're going to close the oven door and not open it for 1 hour. Set the timer for an hour, and after that hour, you're just going to shut your oven off, okay? Then with the oven off, you want to leave the soap in there for a good 24 hours before you try to take it out and unmold it. But after the 24 hours, you want to take it out, try to unmold it, see if you can or can't. If it's too soft, go ahead and let it sit out for another day or so. Depends on the humidity in the air. This is mine after 24 hours, and you can see I'm just taking a pastry cutter here, and I'm just going to start cutting off random chunks. I'm using they're about an inch thick or so, and you can see they're nice chunky sized bars. It has a nice color. And some of those little bubbles that you see on the top, that just happens because I put it in the oven and maybe the gel phase got it too hot, but it doesn't affect the soap in any way. And just cut out the chunks that you need. And notice that I'm wearing gloves. Sometimes the lye can still be a little bit active, even within the 24 hours if you're doing the oven process. So just wear gloves so you don't feel any burning on your hands. And then we're just going to let these sit out for a good 2 to 4 weeks, okay? It's going to take a less cure time than if we did cold process soap, because we did push the saponification process by using that oven. You can see they're kind of hard already, but I would still let them sit out at least another 2 to 4 weeks, because let me show you here the difference in a freshly made soap bar and one that has been cured. So here's a soap bar I made about a month ago. This one's nice and hard. It's the exact same soap recipe. I just added a little pink colorant to that one. This fresh made bar that we just took out, you can see when I dent my fingernail in there, it makes a dent because it's way too soft, okay? It's too fresh. The harder one is going to last you longer in the shower. This soft one here, if I wet this, it will probably turn to mush, okay? The harder your bar is, the longer it's going to last you. So it's definitely worth the wait. And if there's any trace amounts of the lye still in there, with the extra curing time, you're going to get it all out. So you'll end up with a nice, really mild bar of soap, okay? So let them sit out 2 to 4 weeks, and that's it. Okay, so you saw how easy it was to make a batch of soap. These have been sitting out for a couple of weeks now. It's nice and hard, super mild. They're great for people with sensitive skin or children because you know what went into them. 4 different types of oil. The sodium hydroxide is not in the soap, okay? There's no lye left in the soap if it was done correctly, because through that scientific process, right, the chemical process of saponification, there's no lye left in here. You can always double check and use pH strips and check the pH. Make sure that it's not too high, but if you follow the recipe correctly and you know what you're doing, trust me, there's no sodium hydroxide left in the soap. You have a nice, mild, cleansing bar of soap that is all natural. So I hope you enjoyed this video tutorial. If you did, go ahead and hit it with that thumbs up below, share it across the different social media sites, and don't forget to click that subscribe button right there so you won't miss out on any of my future video tutorials. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye.